What's going on, guys? This is the Red Rogue, and I hope you're all doing well today. With patch 905 here, I wanted to get some updated recommendation guides out for all three specs of Rogue, and I figured why not start with what's apparently the new hotness for raiding, Assassination. Thank you so much for joining me today. Now let's see exactly what has changed that makes our poison and bleed experts the new star of the limelight. As always, this video will be segmented out so you can jump around to whatever information you may need. If you have any further questions, feel free to leave a comment below, or you can swing by my community Discord too to ask. The link for that will be in the description of this video. And also a big thank you to the folks over on the Ravenholt Discord, as they're always super quick on pointing out changes and bug fixes on the PTR, as well as putting together revised simulations and APLs for all us sneaky boys. If you're a rogue and haven't stopped by there before, I highly recommend it. I tend to lurk around in there and harass community figures and theory crafters and all that when I have the free time. So for today, we'll be talking about Assassination, which has gone through some high and low points so far since the beginning of Shadowlands. With this recent slew of changes though, Assassination will likely be seeing a strong resurgence in the rogue community, especially for raiding. Before I get too ahead of myself though, please remember this. These changes and revised recommendations are for folks who are trying to squeeze out the most possible damage out of the spec, and enjoy adapting to the rotational and functional differences that these will entail. What I'm getting at basically is, if you're like a fantastic Kyrian Assassination rogue, and you perform really well and enjoy the Covenant and the abilities of your choice, then you will very likely outperform an average to above average min-maxer who just picks up whatever the new hotness is every time a tuning pass occurs. So don't think that because you aren't using what is considered the best option, that you need to drop everything immediately. While there is a few percent of overall damage difference between the Covenant choices, it's still small enough where the margin of human error or skill is frequently a larger DPS difference. So really, if you have fun with whatever you're playing and do well with it, then go for it. Or if your definition of fun is to adapt and learn ways to do the most damage with what's currently available to you, then that's not a bad thing either, it's just a different way of enjoying things. Heck, if you just like the mount or the transmog, then that's a good enough reason too. And also, as I always try to mention, make sure to sim your own character with any changes you want to make, as these are general guidelines and depending on your conduit levels, character gear, stats, legendary choice, the color of the sky on that particular day, the food you had for lunch yesterday, all of that can affect your ideal loadout. With this plethora of disclaimers out of the way, we'll start with the spec-specific changes that have happened with patch 905, as we've had a couple passive abilities added, changed, and removed. First, we have Cut to the Chase. This is a new level 56 passive that is actually a reworked version of an older ability that Assassination had in the past. Basically, as long as you have Slice and Dice active, any combo points you spend on Envenom will increase the duration of your Slice and Dice by 3 seconds per combo point. This, in a lot of situations, means you'll only have to cast Slice and Dice one time in your opener, and then your Envenom should take care of the rest. Except potentially in like AoE situations or multi-target situations where you might not be casting Envenom that much or at all. This change alone is pretty huge, as it means less energy, GCDs, and combo points spent on Slice and Dice, resulting in more damage output by using those resources for damaging finishers. Cut to the Chase does still trigger and keep the Recuperator Conduit heal rolling even if you aren't actually casting Slice and Dice, since the Conduit just checks if you have the Slice and Dice buff active just as a heads up. With the addition of this passive, we have lost the rank 2 Slice and Dice effect, which gave a small energy regeneration boost while Slice and Dice was active. Lastly, Venomous Wounds received a small buff. This passive makes your Garrote, Rupture, and Internal Bleed ticks each give 8 energy, as long as the target is also poisoned, up from 7 energy previously. This is a tiny gain to offset the loss of rank 2 Slice and Dice for single target, but results in a greater buff in multi-target situations. Next, we'll get right into what's probably the hottest topic around right now, Covenant choice. Both the Venthyr and Necrolords have received some reworks with patch 905, resulting in some needed and noticeable improvements to the potency of each of these underrepresented Covenants. I've done videos specifically on the Venthyr and Necrolord changes if you want a bit more insight on each of these topics, and on a positive note for all 4 Covenants in general, they're pretty close in performance with these recent tuning changes, like within 3 to 4% in realistic situations, meaning you shouldn't feel too pressured to swap unless you really enjoy the chase for min-maxing. However, as is the law of DPS, there is always one that performs better than the others, and for pure single target and even in dungeon slice simulations currently, Venthyr has become the highest performing Covenant of the four. The recent damage buffs and changes to the haste effects from Flagellation have resulted in it becoming a potent cooldown, giving Assassination a way to gain a hefty amount of the spec's most favorable secondary stat. Combined with the potency of Nagia the Mistblade, single target is further increased by a flat 3% due to the Dauntless Duelist passive, and another noticeable haste buff is gained from the Thrill Seeker capstone trait on her Soulbind tree. Nagia also performs quite well for Mythic Plus due to Thrill Seeker's stat gains from killing enemies, and with Assassination being a potent single target damage dealer now, Dauntless Duelist is still quite respectable if you want to prioritize boss damage. If not, and you plan on using a lot of consumables, then Exacting Preparation does give you smaller gains in both multi-target and single target. For sustained multi-target damage though, the newly buffed Necrolord Serrated Bone Spike does edge out the potent single target gains of the Venthyr Covenant. Serrated Bone Spike also has some added perks for Assassination, as it is buffed by the potent Assassin Mastery effect, and the bleed also counts towards the Doomblade legendary power. Serrated Bone Spike does spice up the rotation quite a bit in situations where you can take advantage of the free charges on death feature, speeding things up quite a bit for what is commonly known as a slower paced specialization. On paper and in current simulations though, it does appear that Necrolord overall is still edged out in the ever mysterious Dungeon Slice simulation by the Venthyr. There's also a revised version of the Fleshcraft Covenant ability, which now takes less time to channel, gives a larger shield, and a 20% damage reduction while you're channeling the shield. While rogues don't truly suffer from a lack of defensives by any means, this is an added perk as this new version of Fleshcraft is quite solid. For Soulbinds, you'll generally find Bonesmith Aramir with her Marrowed Gemstone to be the strongest in both single target and dungeon-oriented content. Just because I enjoy playing Devil's Advocate though, if your group stays really close together consistently in dungeons, you might find Ameni's Lead by Example primary stat buff to be a potent option in dungeons, specifically if you can take advantage of that reset on death mechanic of Serrated Bone Spike. However, the difference is pretty negligible for the amount of coordination that it would take to capitalize on that effect. While Night Fae did not receive any changes in patch 905, it still offers the most mobility with the Soul-Shaped Covenant ability, as well as two very strong Soulbinds, with Naya being the potent single target choice due to the Burr's ability, and Kyrian having numerous strong benefits in Mythic Plus via First Strike and Wild Hunt tactics. Between these two Soulbinds, you have choices to benefit multiple forms of PvE content, which is an added perk. There is a small bit of synergy with the Sepsis Covenant ability as well, since it is buffed by Potent Assassin, but that is a very minor benefit. And lastly, the Kyrian. Unfortunately, the Kyrian received no noteworthy changes so far and do show to be the lowest performing Covenant across the board for Assassination, though you do gain the Phial of Serenity, which gives us a pretty good way to basically remove anything that Cloak of Shadows can't. That and Swole Owls are kinda cool. Next, a quick heads up on Conduit changes. Generally speaking, for spec-specific choices, well-placed steel will continue to be the best single-target choice, with lethal poisons being a better option in AoE situations due to Shiv only affecting a single target at a time. However, if you're of the Venthyr Covenant, you'll want to run Lashing Scars, as with the recent buffs to Flagellation and the buffs to this Conduit as well, it is a very strong choice. This will give you 4 extra lashes as soon as you trigger Flagellation, meaning an extra 4% haste right as soon as you use the move, and it does a fair bit of damage as well. For the Necrolords out there, you'll find the Covenant-specific Sudden Fractures is a great option in anything with more than a single target, and even in pure single target, it is really close to the popular well-placed steel, which is why it's always important to sim your own character and the options available to you. In sustained multi-target situations, this becomes an exceptionally potent conduit. Now we'll talk Legendaries. There was a bit of tuning done going into patch 905, with some changes large enough to spice up the top damaging choice in single target performance for Assassination. The Doomblade Legendary for raw damage output in single target fights is the strongest choice currently available. A very close second though is the Dashing Scoundrel Legendary, if you prefer a rotation with slightly more energy regeneration at the cost of a small bit of damage. If you've been playing Assassination for a bit already though, then you probably already have a Zul'jik insignia lying around. Don't worry, this is still a very potent option in multi-target situations, and especially for fights where execute phase damage is in high demand. For generic Legendary usable by all 3 specializations of rogues, the Master Assassin Legendary is still the best choice. There was a slight nerf to this Legendary though, as it will only affect rogue damaging abilities and auto attacks now, meaning it won't make your trinkets critically hit anymore, and it won't make the weapons in Necrotic Weight critically hit either. And as a quick topic that hasn't changed much but I felt important to mention, stat priority. Agility is still worth quite a bit more than any of our secondary stats, so you'll often find with Top Gear simulations that your higher item level stuff should regularly be an upgrade. Ideally, you do want to focus on haste primarily, though crit and verse both sit pretty close together depending on your loadout. As the mantra of every guide writer ever, sim yourself to be certain. Mastery is generally the lowest performing stat of the four, so there may be times where an item level upgrade might result in little to no damage gain, but again, make sure to check your own character. As for talent choices, these can vary a lot as well on individual characters due to gear choices, legendaries, soulbinds, etc. Generally speaking though, for single target, if you're running Doomblade, you'll find Blindside, Master Assassin, Vigor, Alacrity, and Poison Bomb to be your best choices. For a common situation where that doesn't hold true though, you might notice that Deeper Stratagem will sim higher for you if you have a decent amount of haste on your gear or if you're playing as Venthyr. In Mythic Plus, you'll find Elaborate Planning, Subterfuge, Marked for Death, Alacrity, and Crimson Tempest will generally be your favored loadout. Again, these are just a broad overview of recommendations for talents, as you might find certain combinations work better for your playstyle or are actually performing better for your character. I will be doing a rotation guide and tips and tricks sort of video for Assassination really soon, but I wanted to get a video out covering all of these noteworthy changes and recommendations first. I hope this video was helpful to you, and if you enjoyed it then please consider leaving a like, a comment, or maybe even subscribing to the channel if you haven't yet. It's all fantastically appreciated and helps a lot with the channel's growth. And as always, my gratitude to you, my viewers, commenters, subscribers, and especially my patrons, who all help make these Shiba Shenanigans possible. Thank you all so much for watching. This is the Red Rogue, and I'll see you guys around.